Bitcoin in trouble? We've got one of the most bearish setups now fully validated since the $112,000 target structure was first mapped out. And in today's video, I'm going to be diving straight into the chart, the key levels, and what it could mean in the short term for Bitcoin and the broader market. My name is Paul Sampson. Welcome back to DataDash. And if you would like daily setups, real-time market insights, and my full technical breakdowns, make sure to check out the DataDash Traders Club over at datadashpro.com. That's where I share all of my updates, my analysis, my trade setups, and more. And while you're there, don't miss Nick's Dash Report, a macro-packed newsletter that breaks down where the smart money is moving across crypto, equities, and the global markets. And if you want the full DataDash experience, be sure that you choose the bundle where you can actually bundle both of them for a discounted rate. Now let's jump in. Now this is going to be more of the shorter term time frame outlook here as we're looking at a little bit of where Bitcoin can go in the near term, but what can also turn into the longer outlook as well. And I started this out by saying that there is one of the most bearish setups that Bitcoin is basically printed in and is pretty valid at the moment. And that setup is known as the bearish shark harmonic. And to be quite honest, this harmonic setup has nailed each and every top in Bitcoin since $30,000 all the way back in 2023. Now, if you recall, our first all-time high that we put in right at the beginning of this year at $110,000, we had the bearish shark in play here as well. And this pattern is derived off of taking out the lows right here. As you can see, the lows were in place right down there. We swept those lows, get everybody very bearish. You run it back to the highs, you take out new highs, basically breaking out to new highs here. And then you get everyone bullish here, only to reverse it once again and effectively just take out everybody in the market as far as the short term would go. Now, I tracked this setup all the way down from the time we made this sweep right here with the targets of 110 to 112 back here. Once I noted that we had put this in and this was valid, we had three major targets, one of which being 99,000, the other being 91, and then the overall target area being down to 86,000 to 80, which was our yearly pivot, among other things. And while this was not the exact bottom, you can also see how just this area was respected as a recent low. And regardless, it's at least something that I was looking to and anticipating when we were all the way up here and not getting bearish for the first time as we were coming down to these lower levels, right? So that is one of the keys here to positioning yourself and trying to attain an edge in these markets. We had the same exact structure back here last year in March of 2024 when we came up and put that first high up here about $74,000 Bitcoin before we had an overall about 30% pullback. It actually dropped a little bit lower than that over here. So same deal, right? Very, very specific setup here, specific targets down to the downside. Once again, not necessarily the overall end all be all low, but it did give us our area where we came down into. And as most of you are aware, if you were watching this channel, as soon as we took out these lows right here at the beginning of April, the second we did that, I started looking for the next harmonic, right? So anytime I see those sweeps like that and we reclaim some key regions, I target a new harmonic setup. Once again, these are based on specific ratios. They are a sequence of Fibonacci's. A lot of times you can actually utilize Fibonacci time frames on them to get a region of time where they could potentially have a completion zone at. Not perfect all the time, but it does give you just another piece of confluence as to if we get to those areas at around that same time frame. Just makes it a little bit more valid, maybe offers up a little bit more caution at the time. And if you were in the Traders Club, you were once again very aware of this setup pretty much along the way. There's many smaller moves that happen along the way, but we now have a very valid bearish shark, the same exact pattern that we had at the high at 110 before we had a sizable decline, the same pattern we had back at 74,000 last year before we had a sizable pullback. And now we have a very large version of that. So this is actually something that is basically taken about 4 months to print from January to May. You'll note that I have the end of May noted up here because when we first even swept this low, I was targeting that we would come up into this completion zone at the end of May based on Fibonacci time. So just as we can take Fibonacci retracements either to the upside or to the downside, we can actually take moves and expand them off of Fibonacci as far as time-wise to see how pivot points in time may basically inflect the chart as well. So once again, I don't marry the time frames or anything of that nature until we get to that region is really when it becomes relevant, because now we had the price action entering to that completion zone at that exact time. Obviously, this was the end of May. This was the 22nd, the week of the 22nd to the 26th, where we kind of came up into this region. And it does make this pattern and this setup very valid. We've already had a pretty decent little pullback here where you can almost state that we have a little downtrend in play. And while we have some shorter term time frame ability to bounce around this region and maybe even range, potentially even still come up and take the high up to about 114, 115 for this to still be a valid setup. Overall, the targets of this setup here are back down to the 0.5 Fibonacci, which is at $93,000. It's also back to our yearly open here. I have noted the B point is also in line with an untapped monthly pivot. So that's a big one for me. It's the average of price from April. So we did not come back down to there in May. And if we were to lose this region on a daily closing basis, the other key areas of this setup are back down to 78,000 and then 69,000 respectively. So not saying that we're going to head straight to those areas. The big one is really this 0.5 region. And I've really been hammering in on this area for a couple weeks now, right? So this like 88,000 to 93,000. Some point in the near future, I think that we make our way down to it. Now that would be an overall about 16% pullback in Bitcoin down to 93. 20% if we drop down to the $88,000 region. I don't anticipate this to happen overnight by any means. This setup took 4 months to basically unfold and complete. I would imagine we take about 50% of that generally to see some of these targets met. So with a 4-month outline, I imagine 1 or 2 months before we get down to this region here. Mind you, it's been about 12 days now. So potentially in the next 2 weeks, we can make our way down to this region. But even into the end of June, into July, I don't think it's out of the question. And short term, if we were to get some bounces here in the meantime, I think that still enables some of the altcoins to see a little bit more upside before we get a decent market cool down, right? So we could still see a couple of weeks go by where maybe Ethereum pushes up to that $3,100 target. Maybe some of these other altcoins push up some of these key regions before seeing maybe that 20 and 30% pullback, assuming we get it, right? So if Bitcoin right now, this is just something that I'm very aware of. I'm very cautious of. I'm not stating that we're going to drop down right this minute. I think that there's some time here. And if we zoom in a little bit more locally, I think that honestly, the more likely scenarios, we actually swing back up towards maybe this 106 to $109,000 area. And the reason being is that we have a new month now on our hands here as we have entered into June. We have a new monthly range to work off of, right? So the previous day range is very relevant in the next day, previous week, next week, previous month, next month, right? So this is a very pretty decent little range here. And this is based on volume, right? So I'm utilizing the fixed range volume profile tool. And during this current month, which is now the next session, it's a very relevant area to be aware of, right? So for me, noting that we have kind of left these lows intact where we're at currently, no guarantee of it, but I would say that potentially if we come down to this like $102,000 area, which is the bottom side of the range, I think that there's still potential for us to come down to this region and just get a simple range rotation. And in this case, all I mean is from low up to high. And we have a weekly NPOC sitting up here. So that is a high volume level that's been left over from a previous week here. You'll note that it's right here about the high side of the range. And then as well as if we just take a simple gold pocket retracement, and let's just assume we come down to this region down below us, we have a gold pocket back up at about 108. Even if we don't do that and we just kind of push up from here first, you got a $108 to $109,000 gold pocket, right? Where we could see this potential short-term downtrend continue, where we have our low, our high, our low, lower high, lower low. Whether or not we come down here first and then get a push up where we have still in place our higher highs here and then put in a lower high in this relative area here. This could be an area that could trigger that drop down about that $93,000 to $88,000 area. So that's how I'm interpreting Bitcoin here at the moment. By no means is that a death sentence to the price action. I think that it's just a normal drawdown if we do see it. I think that would very much so be that buying opportunity that I believe everybody had been waiting on since that $74,000 low just a few weeks ago. And then the more that we're holding above 100,000, I think that really leads into the fuel that may kind of trap people or just get people to finally pull the trigger because they just don't want to miss out, or they're fearful that the price may get away from them, and it very much well can, right? Like by no means is this exact science, and unfortunately I don't know exactly which way the market's going to go. All I can do is prepare for it, and if we get to those key levels, my strategy is now in place to be able to hopefully position myself on one of the better sides here. So overall, pretty potential bearish setup here. Short term, I think that we still push up back to about $107,000, $109,000, and still are not necessarily out of the woods. Of course, I'll be sure to update along the way. And of course, folks, if you found any of this information helpful and you'd like to stay ahead of the next major move, as well as have access to everything I'm watching in real time, from trade setups to market structure shifts, it's shared daily inside the DataDash Traders Club. Be sure to head on over to datadashpro.com to join. And while you're there, check out Nick's Dash report for the deep macro research and portfolio level insight that pairs perfectly with what we do inside the club. And you can even bundle the both of them for a discounted rate and get the full DataDash experience. So hope to see you in there. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, everybody, cheers.